The Roots of Jihad by our guest, Dr. Tawfik Hamid. And now let me introduce him. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
I should also give out the website at rootsofjihad.com.
Yeah.
Most people watching will not know you. Broad opening question. Tell us your story, please.
Yeah. My name is Tawfik Hamid. I was born in Egypt, Cairo, in 1961 for a secular family. My father actually was an atheist and my mother was not religious at all. Around the age of 16, I started to think about the concept of creator and God, and this was through my study for the DNA molecule in biology. So I started to think about the creation and these things, and when I joined the medical school later on, I became really religiously motivated to serve God. This was like a purpose that at that time for me. And I was attracted to the Jamma'a Islameia, which was a terrorist Islamic organization, as classified now, but it was legal back then in the medical school. In this Jamma'a Islameia, I started to learn more about the details of the Islamic teaching, which was called Salafi Islam. That's a sort of Islam that they promote. And I met there with Dr. Ayman al-Zawaheri, who became second in command of Al-Qaeda later on. He was older than me, but he was my mentor, like teacher for all of us. He teaches us about Islam and such
This
things.
is the person we know of who's quite
Yeah, of
infamous.
course, who became second commander. And honestly, within few months period of following this sort of teaching, I changed it totally from an innocent person to someone who is ready to kill. To die for Allah, to kill others, to do crimes. I started to think in taking the theoretical violent teaching into practice. And then just I felt I can't continue in this anymore. And I started...
How long were you with this group?
Just 8 months, but they were more than enough.
In Cairo? Or
yes, in Cairo. In the medical school, they started by a small room in the medical school. The school allowed them to pray there, and it grew into a mosque, and it later on there was a library, and then they started to even intervene with our freedom inside the medical school itself.
And how many people, how many members?
You can say around at least 5% of the medical school were there, so around totally probably 1,000 members overall.
1,000 people?
Or, yeah, around this number.
Being trained by the man who became the number 2 in Al-Qaeda?
Yeah, yeah.
But why, though, would people... You would assume that those with a medical knowledge and a medical aspiration would question fundamentalism and not be natural candidates for violent religious revolution?
That's a very good question, and the answer is simply that our way of education is generally does not encourage critical thinking. It's sort of rote learning. So this is one factor that made us unable to probably to critique what we learned. So this was a factor that you can say, if you are a doctor or engineer or whatever, but it's okay, but if you don't have critical thinking, you could be brainwashed. And also being in the medical school, we used to see what we consider the beauty of the Creator, the power of God in the medical things, in the genetics, in biochemistry, and also the dissection room itself. We see the dead bodies. So these Islamic fundamentalists used to tell us this is how you will be one day, and the day of judgment is coming, and you will be tortured when you die. And they use this sort of fear, they created fear into our hearts, and they used it as energy to direct us toward this sort of violent teaching.
I assume, though, that most of the people there, by the nature of being medical students, were middle class in background. These are not people from impoverished areas.
Absolutely not.
So this wasn't out of poverty or desperation?
Absolutely not. And it's actually catastrophic to assume other causes for this problem other than the teaching itself. The Salafi teaching itself, because if it was poverty or lack of education or such things, it would have affected all people in the society, either Muslims or Christians, to the same degree. So we would have expected to see some suicide bombers in Egypt or in other countries who are Christian, but this never happened. It's always Muslim. So obviously it's not the circumstances. If it is circumstances, it should affect Muslims and the Christians as well. But when it is only in certain sect, you should think deeply that there is something wrong with this sort of teaching. This doesn't mean Islam couldn't be understood peacefully, but the current dominant version and teaching in the mosque, in Al-Azhar University, in areas like Saudi Arabia, certainly promote a lot of violent things. For example, till now, it is basics to this traditional Salafi Islamic teaching, the following: killing the apostates, beating women, calling Jews pigs and monkeys, till now in our mosques, and it is in the teaching till now, declaring wars on non-Muslims to force them on being Muslims, or to force them on paying money called jizya, humiliating tax, or to kill them, and enslaving female war prisoners and raping them, as what is happening now in Darfur. So this sort of teaching is till now fundamental. Till now in Saudi Arabia, the rule is to kill the apostate. In Iran, they kill gays. So if you think there is certainly some element of violence within this teaching, and if this does not change, it will bring a catastrophe for all our world.